In this study, we have investigated stability of Captisol Enabled Melphalan in 0.9% sodium chloride solution in IV bags and glass vials at room temperature and under refrigeration. Melphalan is an alkylating agent which is used in intensive treatment of heme malignancies and solid tumors. The older generic Melphalan, which is a propylene glycol-based formulation, has very limited stability, which is per package insert less than 60 minutes, which significantly affects pharmacy operations and planned patient care. The newer formulation, which is Captisol Enabled Melphalan or EVA-MELA, is a newer formulation with increased stability. Per package insert, it has 4-hour stability at room temperature. Extended stability will allow for preparation and provide control to pharmacy and distribution for ongoing studies, as well as it would also allow to investigate the benefits of prolonged infusion of Melphalan, which would not be possible with the generic Melphalan. Hence, in this study, we have determined and compared the stability of Captisol Enabled Melphalan solution in IV bags with generic Melphalan preparation. We have also investigated the stability of the 5 mg per ml reconstituted glass vials for both CE Melphalan as well as generic Melphalan at room temperature and under 4 degrees centigrade. Study design. So, lyophilized CE Melphalan or the generic Melphalan was reconstituted to 5 mg per ml with 0.9% sodium chloride, or the supplied diluent in case of generic Melphalan in glass vials. These reconstituted vials were further diluted to desired concentration using 0.9% sodium chloride or normal saline in PVC IV bags. The IV bags for CE Melphalan were prepared at the concentrations of 1 and 2 mg in normal saline, while the generic Melphalan IV bags were prepared at concentrations of 1, 1.5, and 2 mg per ml in normal saline. These prepared IV bags or reconstituted vials were stored at room temperature or under refrigeration. An aliquot was drawn at different time points from these IV bags or glass vials. Melphalan concentration at each time point was determined using a validated HPLC assay. At different time points, Melphalan concentration was determined and normalized to the concentration at time 0. The concentration at time 0 was considered as 100%, and as time passes, the concentration would decrease. So, as long as the percent concentration at any given time point was greater than 90% compared to time 0 was considered stable. So in figure 1, here's the sampling schema which we had for the different IV bags. For CE Melphalan, which was stored both at room temperature and under refrigeration, samples were collected at 0 hour, 2 hour, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24 hours. The generic Melphalan, which was stored at room temperature, samples were collected at 0 hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3, 4, 6, and 24 hours. The generic Melphalan stored under refrigeration, samples were collected at 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8 hours. Once these samples were collected, they were immediately analyzed in a validated HPLC assay. So here are the results for the stability of the CE Melphalan. In this table, we have the two concentrations of IV bags, 1 mg and 2 mg per ml, and this is the concentration percent remaining compared to time 0 at different time points. At room temperature, we can see that 1 mg per ml is stable up to 6 hours at room temperature, and then it starts degrading. The concentration is less than 90% compared to time 0. compared to that 2 milligram per ml is stable all the way to 24 hours compared to, and the concentration is close to 93% compared to time zero. Under refrigeration or 4 degrees, 1 milligram per ml IV bag, C melphalan IV bags was stable up to 8 hours, and the 2 milligram per ml IV bags under refrigeration was stable for 24 hours. In contrast, the generic melphalan at the so here's the concentration for generic melphalan, the different time points. Under room temperature, the generic melphalan concentration at 1 milligram per ml was only stable for 1 hour. 1.5 milligram per ml and 2 milligram per ml concentrations were stable for up to 2 hours, while when they were stored under refrigeration, 1 milligram per ml IV bag was stable for 2 hours, 1.5 and 2 milligram per ml IV bags were stable up to 4 hours. After that, the concentration started decreasing, and at the end of 8 hours, there was precipitation observed in 2 milligram per ml IV bags. When we looked at the stability of generic melphalan or C melphalan in the reconstituted glass vials, we found that the generic melphalan at concentration of 5 milligram per ml was stable up to 6 hours at room temperature. We couldn't determine the stability of generic melphalan under refrigeration because it started precipitating at the end of 2 hours. In contrast, the C melphalan at concentration of 5 milligram per ml at room temperature, it was stable for 48 hours. It was also, C melphalan was also stable under refrigeration conditions all the way to 48 hours, and no precipitation was observed, and it was exactly the same. This figure here shows the data presented in tables, which shows that the C melphalan at concentrations of 2 milligram per ml is stable for up to 24 hours, while the lower concentration 1 milligram per ml is stable only for 6 hours. In contrast, the generic melphalan is not stable for a long time, and the maximum stability we observed was for 2 hours for the concentration of 1.5 and 2 milligram per ml. This is the stability of generic melphalan and C melphalan at 4 degrees. We can see that under 4 degrees as well, the 2 milligram per ml was stable for all the way for 24 hours, and the C melphalan at 1 milligram per ml was stable only for 8 hours. However, the concentration of 1 milligram, the generic melphalan, they were only stable for 2 hours or 4 hours, depending on the concentration which was prepared. So in summary, C melphalan, when prepared at the concentrations of 2 milligram per ml in IV bags, was stable for 24 hours at room temperature and under refrigeration. The C melphalan reconstituted vials was stable for 48 hours at room temperature and under refrigeration. The C melphalan 1 milligram per ml was stable for 6 hours at room temperature and 8 hours under refrigeration. The generic melphalan reconstituted vial 5 milligram per ml was stable for 6 hours at room temperature, but precipitated out of solution under refrigeration after 2 hours. Generic melphalan at concentrations of 1.5 and 2 milligram per ml was stable for 1 hour, 2 hour, and 2 hour respectively at room temperature. Under refrigeration, generic melphalan with the concentration 1 milligram per ml was stable for 2 hours, 1.5 and 2 milligram per ml was stable for 4 hours. 2 milligram per ml solution precipitated out of solutions after 6 hours. C melphalan has longer stability in IV bags and glass containers as compared to generic melphalan.